Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a splendid new recording that you should pay great attention to of Benjamin Britten's ballet, The Prince of the Pagodas. You know, a lot of people don't even know that Britten wrote a gigantic, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long. It's a big ballet, a full-length classical ballet in the Tchaikovsky, Prokofiev, Russian tradition. And that's probably one of the reasons no one pays any attention to it, because, most people don't think that British composers write big ballets in the Russian tradition. In the 1950s, when he wrote this, it was that kind of ballet was sort of going out of style. I mean, it was performed, it was repertory stuff for ballet troupes, for ballet theaters, but new compositions in that style were really were considered kind of passé. I mean, when you think about it, unless you were in Soviet Russia, people were doing French stuff, short, perky French things like Daphnis and Chloe or La Pairie or, Ravel's Mother Goose or things like that. I mean, these shorter pieces. And also in England, Constant Lambert and William Walton and all those guys wrote for the Ballet Russe, generally wrote shorter works. And they're delightful and wonderful, and we love them. Cydalise et le Chèvre Pied by Pierre Ney. I mean, there's just gorgeous stuff. It's an amazing repertoire. We've talked about the big Ballet Russe boxes. And so the grand classical ballet was a little bit out of fashion, particularly among the most contemporary ballet theaters and dancers. I mean, think of Copland's Appalachian Spring and Billy the Kid and all that stuff, which dates from a little bit before this. This was the 1950s, and the great Copland ballets were in the 1940s. So we had Martha Graham, and you had all these like famous people doing short ballets. That's my point, and this ain't short. That means in order to make it sustainable, listenable, it has to be packed. I mean, jam-packed with interesting music. And it truly is. I mean, it's full of good stuff. It's got tunes. It's got a wonderful Tchaikovsky-like waltz at the end, sort of the climax. It's got, very clear leitmotifs that return regularly, like Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet does. I mean, it really has all of the elements you want in a big, juicy classical ballet. It also has a lot of things that are totally Britten-esque. His ostinato style, which they, as you might call it. In other words, there are pieces that are borne by very colorful orchestral accompanimental figures with repeated melodic figuration on top. There's a wonderful pas de deux in Act 3, which has this sort of, how do you describe it? It just sort of goes chaka 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 like that. The snare drum going cha 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 cha, and the tune is just this sort of ya da dum. It comes at you from every possible direction, and it's really, really cool. That was one of the pieces that sort of got me hooked on this work anyway. But it hasn't been recorded many times. There's a suite, and the suite has a bunch of nice numbers in it, and it's lovely and whatnot, but it doesn't even begin to give you an idea of all the stuff that's in here. Britten wrote this when he was under the influence of his visits to Indonesia and Balinese gamelan. And his gamelan music was used in the church parables, for example, and also in Death in Venice. And it's all part of his late style. And it shows up probably most vividly here, I think for the first time, to be honest with you. Britten was a wonderful composer, but he didn't record the whole thing. He recorded an edited down version of it, a cut version of it, which is quite a good performance in early Decca stereo from about the time of the premiere. But they wouldn't even give him the opportunity to play the whole thing. So until Oliver Knussen came along on Virgin and did the complete ballet, there was no recording of it. And that's pretty shocking when you think about it, because it's only about 20 years ago, well, 30 years ago now. But it was fairly recently. We finally got a superb complete recording of the entire ballet. And now there's this one, which is every bit as good as the one on Virgin. Now, the Virgin one, when Virgin was sucked up by EMI, they took The Prince of the Pagodas and they put it on a twofer thing and reissued it. And you may be able to find that floating around somewhere, or maybe in some big box of something, God only knows. But essentially, now that this is out, it is the most viable candidate for the complete ballet of the three recordings of the most of the ballet, including Britten's own. So I recommend it very highly. The playing is the music director is the principal conductor of Hallé at this point is Kanchun Wong, who's very talented, and they sound marvelous, and the sonics are really, really good, and there are no issues whatsoever with the interpretation. It's rhythmic and punchy and colorful and does all the things you want to do in this particular ballet. The story is completely stupid, by the way. I mean, it's a ballet, right? I mean, what it has to do with like a nice princess and an evil princess, and they go to Pagoda land where the pagodas do pagoda things, and there's a lizard, and the lizard is the prince, and instead of a swan or whatever, I guess you kiss the lizard. I don't know what you do with the lizard, and I have never been able to figure out the plot or care. Frankly, I just think the music is marvelous because it's vintage Benjamin Britten from his ripest and most fertile period. It's actually interesting that around the same time that he did this, he also did Gloriana, which was the biggest failure of his life for reasons that had absolutely, again, that had nothing to do with the music. Gloriana is a masterwork. It's fabulous. And so is this. So give yourself a shot if you like Britten's 4C interludes from Peter Grimes, for example, or if you like, any of his other orchestral pieces, the Sinfonia da Requiem, or one of the violin or piano concertos, or one of those things. You're going to like this. You really will. And there's lots of it. So you can take your time getting to savor every little nugget. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.